Whether we realize it or not, we're constantly comparing ourselves to the people around us. It happens in small ways, like noticing a friend's new job or scrolling through social media. But these comparisons are more than just observations. They shape our identities, our goals, and even how we present ourselves to the world. Welcome to Social Theory Today, where we're exploring how our sense of self is influenced by social comparison, self-monitoring, and the signals we send to others. Social comparison is a natural part of being human. It's how we gauge where we stand, how we're doing, and where we want to go. By comparing ourselves to others, we find benchmarks for success, which can help us make sense of our own progress and identity. Within Social Accreditation Theory, or SAT, social comparison helps us align ourselves with the standard society values, affecting how we feel about ourselves. Social comparison happens in two main ways. Upward comparison is when we measure ourselves against those we see as more successful. It can inspire us to improve, but it can also make us feel we're falling short. Then there's downward comparison, where we look at others who seem less successful. This can boost our self-esteem temporarily, but it doesn't always lead to growth. Upward comparison can be a double-edged sword. Seeing someone else succeed can motivate us to work harder, reach further, and set new goals. If a friend gets a promotion, it might make us want to up our game. But there's also a downside. Constant upward comparison can leave us feeling like we'll never measure up, creating a sense of inadequacy. It's a balance. SAT tells us that we seek validation by aligning with societal standards, but if we're always looking up, it's easy to feel like we're falling short. This cycle can lead to self-doubt and stress, especially when we constantly feel we're not quite there. On the other side, we have downward comparison. This happens when we measure ourselves against someone we see as struggling or behind. It can boost our self-esteem, giving us a sense of security in our abilities or progress. Seeing someone else miss a deadline or struggle can make us feel more competent in comparison. But while downward comparison can make us feel good temporarily, it can also lead to complacency. If we're always looking downward, we might feel less pressure to grow or improve. SAT reminds us that validation and growth come from engaging with challenges, not just feeling good by comparison. As we compare ourselves to others, we're not just observing, we're also adjusting how we present ourselves. This is where self-monitoring comes in. Self-monitoring is when we pay close attention to how others might perceive us, adapting our behavior, style, or even opinions to fit social expectations. It's an active way of shaping our image, and it's closely tied to social comparison. When we post on social media, we're not only sharing our lives, we choose specific photos, words, and achievements that align with how we want to be seen. This is identity signaling, and it plays a big role in how we build our personal brands. By showing certain parts of our lives, we're both shaping how others see us and reinforcing our self-image. In a way, we're all curating ourselves to match our upward comparisons, creating a version that feels validated by others. But there's a catch. The more we focus on signaling an idealized identity, the harder it becomes to feel genuinely satisfied. SAT shows us that when we're constantly seeking external validation, it can be easy to lose sight of our authentic goals and values. Self-monitoring and identity signaling can help us fit in, but they can also lead to a constant need for approval, which can erode our sense of self over time. Social media takes these dynamics of comparison and signaling to another level. Every time we scroll, we're exposed to curated versions of other people's lives, their vacations, their successes, the filtered highlights. This constant exposure amplifies our upward comparisons, leaving us feeling that everyone else is living a more successful, more satisfying life. On social media, our self-monitoring and identity signaling are in full force. We're not only consuming others' highlight reels, but also creating our own, adjusting our posts to meet unspoken social standards. This can create a loop. We compare, we signal, we compare again, each time adjusting our self-image to try to align with what we see as ideal. So how do we find balance? It starts with awareness. By recognizing that upward and downward comparisons, self-monitoring, and identity signaling are all part of our social lives, we can begin to use these tools with intention. Instead of letting upward comparison make us feel inadequate, we can focus on what genuinely matters to us, our personal values, goals, and the things that bring us fulfillment. And when it comes to signaling our identity, it's worth asking ourselves, are we presenting an image to gain approval? Or are we sharing what truly represents us? SAT reminds us that true validation doesn't come just from meeting external standards. It comes from connecting with our authentic selves and building a self-image that aligns with our real values, not just what looks good on the surface. In the end, social comparison and identity signaling will always be part of how we navigate the world. But the more we understand these forces, the more we can decide when to engage with them and when to let them go. Social accreditation theory shows us that while we may seek validation from others, true identity comes from living in alignment with our own values. So next time you find yourself comparing, remember, the only real standard that matters is the one you set for yourself. Thanks for watching Social Theory today. Join us next time as we explore more about the unseen forces shaping our lives and how understanding them can lead to a more fulfilling path forward.